Hi, this is Master Coach Kim Giles here, and I want to welcome you to this little executive coaching course on overcoming the fear of failure. And the truth is that every one of us battles on a daily basis a fear that we might not be good enough. It's one of the two core fears that every person on the planet does battle with. But this fear specifically is the one that holds us back largely at work and home more than any other. And I think you'll be able to see as we kind of go through the course today how your fear that you're not good enough affects your relationships and the way that you show up with other people. So I'm going to hit screen share here so that I can show you some slides on this. See if this is going to work for me. All right. So today, not only am I going to teach you how to get out of your own fear of failure, but I'm also going to teach you some principles of human behavior that are actually true with everybody on the planet, including you. And when you understand these principles, you're going to understand what other people need, and this is going to contribute to also the kind of relationships you build with others. So the first principle that I want you to understand is that everybody on the planet battles the same two core fears every day to some degree. And these two core fears are responsible for a large percentage of our behavior. So it's really important that all of us understand them. Now, the first one we just talked about is the fear of failure, the fear that I might not be good enough. And it's that deep inadequacy fear that most of us have had since we were a small child. And I think it started when you were a little kid, because no matter what kind of kid you were, about 50 times a day, they said, no, don't do that. Don't be like that. Can't you be more like this? And the message that came through to all of us is that there's something about us that's kind of inadequate. We need to be different than who we really are to be enough. And this, starts when we're really young, and then we go to school. And the first thing you learned in school is that there are kids smarter, better looking, and more athletic than you. And that fear got bigger, right? And I wish I could tell my children that as an adult, I've grown out of that fear of failure. But on some level, I think it's even bigger. I think it grows with us because as an adult, there's even more levels on which you can fail. You can now be a terrible parent and spouse. You can fail at work. You've just got more failure in the mix. So I'm sure you're already familiar with this because you feel it every day. The good news is that in this class, I'm going to teach you how to lessen it, how to take some of the power away from that fear and give it back to you. But before we do that, I also want you to understand the second core fear that everybody on the planet deals with is what we call the fear of loss. And really, this fear is the fear of anything that isn't what I wanted. So it's really the fear that my life isn't going to be good enough. I'm not going to get today the life that I wanted. So there's all kinds of loss we can experience. We lose people, we can lose money, and we stress a lot about those two losses. But there's a lot of little losses. When I go home at night and my kids have made a huge mess in the house and I get angry about it, it's because I'm in a loss state. I feel taken from or robbed by them messing the house up. They just stole time and energy from me. And that's why I feel put out and I get angry. Now, what I want you to notice is anytime that you have a people problem, you feel in conflict, you get in a fight or an argument with someone, it is always because you either feel insulted and they triggered your fear that you might not be good enough, or you feel taken from or mistreated and they just triggered your fear of loss. As a matter of fact, think about the last people problem you had, last fight with your spouse or anything like that, and see if you can tell which fears might be in play, because these two fears are behind all bad behavior. And the reason that fear creates bad behavior is it makes us selfish. You see, when you're in fear, your focus is totally and completely on you. It's about getting whatever I need to make that fear go away or be smaller. So if yelling at the kids and really telling them off about making messes like this kind of makes me feel safer, that's where my subconscious reaction will just automatically go. Sometimes the fear makes us shrink, and the bad behavior looks more like insecurity or seeing ourselves as less than other people, playing small. And sometimes fear does that. Other times it drives you the other way. It either makes you a workaholic and you're trying to earn your value through your performance, or it could make you a show-off or a know-it-all. A lot of people that are show-offs are actually battling a huge fear that they might not be good enough. And the know-it-all behavior is really about them trying to prove to both you and them that they do have value. So that's why they behave that way. Another common bad behavior is people who are very controlling or bossy. And they are usually struggling with fear of loss. And they're so afraid that things won't be the way they need them to be in order to feel safe, that they'll control situations. They'll become very bossy. Someone suffering from fear of loss can be territorial, very protective, because they're on guard for mistreatment. So what I want you to come away with this section of the class understanding is that all bad behavior is about fear. And this really helps us to have more compassion for other people, because when we see somebody being arrogant and we see them as scared, not just being a jerk, we treat them a lot differently. And I also want you to recognize this in yourself, that when you're behaving badly, it's because you're scared. So if we can step back and figure out what we're scared of, we also will know what we need. Now, in this class specifically, I just want to talk about the fear of failure and those moments when you realize that you're in a bad mood, or you're grouchy, or you're maybe overgiving and being a people pleaser, or you're having a hard time with boundaries and you can't say no, and you hate this about yourself. It's just because there's fear of failure in play behind the behavior. So I want to teach you today how to lessen that fear of failure. And this is going to really help you to have boundaries, to be able to handle getting feedback, telling people things they don't want to hear, because you will know that that experience doesn't change your value. And that's what's going to be really important about this. Now, I'm going to get into psychology just a little bit here. Take another sip of water. I want to explain from a psychology standpoint where your fear of failure comes from. And it actually comes from one very foundational belief that you have that's so under the surface, most of us don't realize we even have it. But this one belief is actually the reason that you are afraid you might not be good enough. So the belief is that human value is changeable. And somewhere along the line, we've all bought into this belief and we've accepted it as a fact, even though it's not a fact. It's just an idea that your value as a person can go up and down. Now think about this. You believe that if you could just lose weight or make more money or just do a little bit better, that your value would literally go up, and then you could finally feel good about yourself. But if you believe your value can go up, you also believe it can go down. And that means if you can't lose that baby weight and you're not making enough money, or you're struggling with budgeting, or you blew it with one of your kids, you literally let those mistakes take away from your value, and you feel like crap because you feel less than other people. So we've all bought in. I think almost everybody on the planet actually subconsciously believes that their value can go up and down. Well, as long as that's true, no matter how hard you work, no matter what you do to try to become better, you're going to still see certain people that feel like they have more than you, or they're better than you. They look better. They're making more money. No matter where you get, there's still people above you. And bottom line is, you're always going to feel like you're not enough. No matter how hard you try, this is actually a game you can't win. So this belief that value can go up and down means that you see some human beings as better than other human beings. And that means you will always be afraid that you're not enough. So it's really a game that we can't win. And the other thing I want you to notice is that you actually base your value as a human being on these 4 things: your appearance, your performance, your property, and the opinions of other people, what they think of you. Now, you may assign a certain amount of weight to 1 or 2 of those more than the others. I think we all have a kind of unique formula on what makes us more valuable. And maybe you want to take a minute and own this for yourself. How much weight do you put in appearance? Or does appearance not really matter to you and you base more of your value on how you perform? Or are you really a people pleaser? And a lot of your sense of value comes from what other people think of you and the feedback that you're getting. What does that recipe look like for you? Why don't you take just a minute here and jot down, if you had to do a formula of those 4 things, what percentage of your value rests in each one? Go ahead and take a second here and write something down. Okay, hopefully you gave that a little thought. Now, what's the difference between a belief and a fact? I'm sure you can tell a belief we can't prove, right? It's not provable. It's an idea. It's a theory even, where a fact is something that's provable. And this idea that human value can change is totally and completely a belief. And just because you've accepted it as a fact doesn't make it one. And because it's a belief, that means it can change. We could create a new belief and even make that new belief our accepted belief. We could trust in it. We could own it. And it would change completely how we feel. And really, I want you to know how you feel all day, every day is completely dependent on your perspective, the way you're seeing yourself and the situations around you. And sometimes the smallest thing can change your perspective, and you suddenly look at something differently and you feel completely different about it. And that's what I'm hoping to do for you in this class today. I want to give you some ideas that may just slightly shift the way you see your value, and it may completely change how you feel. So this is the new perspective I want to introduce to you, the idea that human value is infinite, absolute, and unchangeable. Now, if that's true, that your value as a human being can't go up and it can't go down, it also means that you have the same intrinsic worth as every other person on the planet. And there's nothing any of us can do to make our value go up and down. And I don't know about you, but just the idea that every human soul on the planet has the same intrinsic worth resonates as a really beautiful idea to me. Now, I often get asked, well, what about murderers? What about bad people that are in prison? They still have the same value as me? And I'm going to recommend that you say yes, that you decide all human beings have the same intrinsic worth. Now, that doesn't mean they're making the same choices, right? And we all get to experience the consequences of the choices we make, which creates a very different journey for each of us. But at our heart, the essence of our being, our spirit selves, as a human being, we all have the same worth. And your worth can't go up and can't go down. Now, the only way that this idea is going to get power in your life, though, is if you start making it part of all day, every day, the language in your home, the way you teach your children or grandchildren, that you're constantly talking about people in terms of having infinite and absolute value. So the way we do this in my home is we'll be out and we'll see a homeless person with a cardboard sign. And my children may notice this, and I make sure that I point out that he's in a very different journey than we are. He's having different lessons, but he has the same exact value as a human being that we have, and don't forget that. And then we might see a rich person buzz by in a Ferrari, and we remind our children again the same thing, that we all have the exact same intrinsic worth. And just because they're in a different journey and they have more money than we do and they live in a nicer house, that doesn't change their value as a person. And then my favorite is when I have a child come home with an A a grade on something, and I get to tell them that's wonderful. But just remember, that doesn't make you have more value than kids that got B's or C's or D's or F's. We all have the same value anyway, but I'm proud of you. How do you feel about this? Are you happy with your performance? And make sure that we do that when they get an A, so that when they get the F, our response can be exactly the same. How do you feel about that? Well, at least it didn't change your value. You still have the same value as everybody else, and you always will. It's really fun when the kids play soccer or baseball and they win, and the kids come off the field going, "We killed those guys, we won." To remind them that, yeah, you won the game, but that doesn't make you more valuable. You still have the same value as the kids on the other team. And when they lose the game, to get to say, well, at least that didn't change your value. You still have the same value as the kids on the other team. This has to literally become what we teach and how we talk about human value all the time, if it is literally going to change your perspective about yourself. It can't be true about you unless you're willing to let it be true for everyone. And that means you're going to have to let go of judgment. That means we can't stand and gossip and criticize other people as if they're less than us. Because if we do that, you're giving power to the old perspective that some people are better than other people. And you've got to pick a camp. So I highly recommend that you play with this idea that all human beings have the exact same value, and see what a difference it makes in your life. And I have to tell you, it's something I still have to practice every day. I'll make a mistake on something or trip in public, and I have to remind myself that did not affect my value. I have the same value as everyone else. But the more that we play with this, and I've been teaching this to my executive clients for over 15 years, the more you play with this idea that your value can't change and that it's the same no matter what, an amazing freedom starts to come. That you can show up, you can take risks, you can speak up where you normally wouldn't, because you know that even if people think it's a dumb idea, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change your value or who you are. It gives you a different confidence level that comes across in all of your relationships. And I've always said, in any relationship, a marriage or a relationship at work, the most powerful thing you could do to improve any relationship is to work on your own self-esteem. Because when you have less fear of failure, you're worried about yourself less, and you have more power and potential and abundance to give to others, to show up and listen and care and serve and be there for them. And the truth is, when you're deeply afraid you're not good enough, you just have nothing to give other people. Your bucket is empty. And so the more that we know that our value is secure all the time, we don't have to worry about that. Now, one other little visual that we often give our clients is we have you imagine a big diamond. And this is the only diamond on the planet this size and this color. And if this was a real diamond, imagine how valuable it would be. It would be basically priceless. And think about why it would have such great value. It would have great value because of its uniqueness. Anything on the planet that's a one of a kind is incredibly valuable. And its nature, what it's made of, because it's literally made of diamond material. I actually have a big diamond in my office. But the nature, what it's made of, is part of what gives it great value. Now, to me, you are a one-of-a-kind, irreplaceable, the only you there will ever be, which makes you the most unique thing on the planet. And what you're made of is human soul. And a human soul is the most valuable thing in the universe. And so instead of every day basing your value on your appearance, your performance, your property, what people think of you, play with the idea of basing your value on your nature and your uniqueness, two things that never change, that will always be the same, which means your value can't change. And also, every person on the planet has the exact same value because they're a one-of-a-kind human soul too. And so this diamond perspective helps a lot of our clients to embrace this idea. The one other trick that we sometimes use to embrace this idea that your value can't change is the idea of seeing life as a classroom versus a test. So I want you to think back in school. You know, the problem with a test is that your grade is on the line, and any mistake you make counts permanently on your grade, and you can't fix it. That's why we all hated tests, right? In a classroom, there is no test. Your grades aren't on the line. This is learning time. And the teacher might give you problems to solve. But if you get one wrong, you can just erase it and try again, right? Because it's where the goal is to learn, not to determine your value. And you have the power to decide in your life if you're going to see life as a test where every mistake permanently affects your value, or if you're going to see it as a classroom. And everything that happens to you is a lesson, but none of it changes your value as a human soul. I get the privilege a couple times a year to teach this principle at the Juvenile Detention Center here in Salt Lake. And every time I get to do that, I have a kid come up to me and say, now wait a minute, I got to make sure I got this straight. You're telling me all I have to do is decide that I'm going to see life as a classroom. For me, life is a classroom. And that means all the mistakes I made in the past, they were just lessons, but I still have the same value as you. And I get this just by deciding to see it that way. And I get to say, yeah, that's all you have to do is decide to see it that way. And that's how you feel about yourself. And that's the perspective that determines really the quality of your life. So we're really hoping that you'll embrace this opportunity to learn this today and start practicing every day, seeing your value as unchangeable. Now, if it's resonated with you, but you know that fear of failure is a huge problem in your life, we've also provided lots of different resources to help you to change this belief. You can visit our website, claritypointcoaching.com, where we've got books, workbooks, we've got coaching opportunities, and we pride ourselves on having tools that would fit anyone with any budget. So please reach out to us if you know that fear of failure is a really big issue in your life and you want some additional help to change that belief. We would love to be there for you. I hope this has been helpful. Keep choosing every day to see your value as unchangeable and make it a good one.